I'm Pastor Julius Harper, and welcome to Lifting High the Name of Jesus. We invite you to stay tuned for our program as we share the Word of God and lift high our Lord. And immediately following, we'll have a word for you. Thank you much, and God bless you.
Lord, we ask right now that as we move forward today.
Hi, and welcome to Talkin With Felicia. On today's show, we're going to be talking about diversity here in Santa Clarita. And my guest is the Pastor Julius Harper from Santa Clarita Christian Fellowship. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you so much for having me, Felisha.
Well, you know, we all know that Santa Clarita has changed over the years, and diversity is booming out in this area. So I'd like to know, when did you come into Santa Clarita, and how was it when you first got here?
Well, you know, my wife and I go back quite a ways. A cumulative total of about 14 years we've been here in Santa Clarita. Mm-hmm. And we really arrived here in this wonderful valley back in the mid-'80s.
So how has the canvas changed from the 80s to 2007?
Well, just to give you an example, back in the early 80s, it was a rare occasion, so to speak, that you would actually find a quote-unquote African-American person or a black person that you would find. That was a rare exception. Now, of course, the valley has grown tremendously, and there's a wonderful, diverse property here, lots of people, and it's like a completely different valley.
So now you believe that Santa Clarita is not just a predominantly white community. Now Santa Clarita is a more multicultural community? Well,
you know, multicultural is a very interesting term. I think it's certainly more diverse. The majority of the population, you know, certainly still from the Caucasian background, as many of those individuals were here first. But I think, for example, that the Newhall Land and Farming Company has done a great deal of attracting a lot of different people, their models especially, the outreach, and then creating a general atmosphere that I think makes many people feel very comfortable in the valley.
So do you believe that the people who are already in Santa Clarita have accepted the changes of all the differences that we now see in Santa Clarita with more African Americans, more Asians, more Hispanic Americans? How do you think, from your opinion, that the community has embraced us?
Well, absolutely. There's been an embracing all around. And of course, the beautiful thing about being in a growing community like Santa Clarita is that everyone else is from somewhere else. So, you know, you generally don't find yourself running into a kind of, this is my neighborhood. When we move into the valley, when we move into an area, we're all brand new. So I think that has really helped to pave the way quite a difference, made quite a difference in terms of how people are accepted, because we're all coming from somewhere else to make better homes for our families.
So do you think that there is an African-American neighborhood in Santa Clarita, or a predominantly Mexican neighborhood in Santa Clarita, or Asian neighborhood? Do you think there's small pockets of a small group of us in different neighborhoods, or do you think we're all just splattered?
You know, you're not going to find a so-called hood here in Santa Clarita. What really determines where a person lives is economics. And I think you come out, you're looking for a great place for your family, and you go where your money can take you. Though, you know, the fact of the matter is there are certain areas, for example, that are clearly identified as more Hispanic type areas. But in general, you're not going to find all the Hispanic people in one particular area. You're not going to find all the Korean people in one particular area. You're going to have diversity, but that really is more dictated by economics rather than ethnic background.
Now, you being a pastor, how do you think the youth has embraced all the different changes?
That's a really interesting question, because I think when you talk about the youth in general, first of all, a 16 or 17-year-old, their whole life is about change.
On a regular basis.
On a regular basis. So it's hard for me to imagine them having difficulty embracing the change that goes on here as being any different than any other change that's going on in their lives. However, I do understand that there have been some quote-unquote tensions.
Yes, there's
people that have
been tensions
so-called
in the high schools.
People that have so-called difficulties. But I think if there were not differences in the so-called ethnic groups, that there would be cliques, because people at that age are going to have difficulty anyway. So I think in general, that's really the answer to the question.
You know, it's so funny you say that, because youth on a whole, their life changes all the time, you know, from year to year, from elementary, from high school. But what I've noticed out here in Santa Clarita, that in the majority of the elementary schools, you may see a few different minority groups, you know, one African American here, one Asian here. But then I noticed that when they get in junior high school and in high school, they're more bigger clusters of the different minorities, because I think part of that is because there are more elementary schools out here than anything else. But when they get into bigger clusters, do you think that if they weren't in for lack of a better word, if they weren't in a clique in elementary school, but they see a lot more of us. If you see a lot more Asian kids, you're gonna run to them. You're gonna see a lot more African Americans, you're gonna run to them. Do you think they get themselves in those clusters, and do you think that makes them feel better?
I think that that's a natural progression, just in terms of how people socialize. They have a tendency to want to flock with individuals that have a common background.
Yeah, exactly.
Different jokes, the humor, and so forth. And again, at that particular age, they're learning to navigate through a number of different social situations. And it's very comfortable to find people
that look like
you, that can relate to what you're talking about. And I think that there's a natural progression there.
Now, being a pastor in Santa Clarita, do you think that some people may say that puts you in a position to be considered, a leader? Would you call yourself a black leader or just a leader here in Santa Clarita because you're a pastor and you help people in many different areas? So where do you like to put yourself at? Do you want to pigeonhole yourself like most people just say, I'm a black pastor, I'm a black leader in the community, I'm going to do this for Santa Clarita, I'm going to do that for Santa Clarita? Where do you think you stand, leader or black leader?
Well, if you were to look in the dictionary, under black leader, you're not going to find a picture of me. I'm primarily a father and a husband, first of all, that was called into a position of being a pastor. I'm a spiritual leader of the congregation where I'm at, a shepherd of those who are in my flock, the Lord's flock, but certainly I wouldn't call myself a black leader. In fact, that particular term is one that I'm not really comfortable with, but I've become much more comfortable with it now that a lot of more interesting leaders have come into the fray. For example, Barack Obama and some of the individuals that are
Barack Obama.
Absolutely.
Give me your take on that.
Well, this is an indivial that certainly excites me tremendously.
Oh, it's so do I.
He's got a lot of strong family values. Yes, he's part of the wrong party, because I'm not part of his particular party. But if I look at him as an individual, here's a person that has very strong family values and is very viable in terms of being able to add some kind of dialogue that's real. I never felt that way about any of the other quote unquote candidates that were there in the past. Here's an individual that I think could really be not just a quote unquote black leader, but really a person who could be a change agent for the country overall. And that person would be a leader.
I've heard him spoke several times, and I would say he's just a leader.
Absolutely.
I want people to stop saying, "Oh, he's a black leader." Back when Martin Luther King was here, of course he was a black leader. We needed leaders. We needed lots of changes. But today, you want to be called a leader. You don't want to be called, "Oh, that's just another black man who's a leader." We don't want to use those terms. And it's funny you said a black leader, and I thought for a moment I said, "Well, should I have said African American leader or black leader?"
Hard to keep up nowadays, Felisha.
I want to be PC. I want to make sure that I'm not offending you, and that you understand what my questions are.
Absolutely.
So it's not coming out, well, did she just say something and I didn't want to hear?
Absolutely.
Especially speaking of him, I think he has a long way to go, and Lord knows I wish him lots of luck, because there's a change coming.
Absolutely.
And I think that he can do that for the community. Do you know how many African American churches are here in Santa Clarita?
Well, again, you mentioned about being politically correct.
I want to be PC, so you help me out here.
But I'll just tell you, there are about 3 or 4 churches that I would identify as having a unique appeal to the African American community. But I think the pastors individually, and I stand in that party as well, would be very uncomfortable saying that they are, quote unquote, a black church. Obviously, we're all preaching the gospel.
Yes.
And that gospel is a universal gospel to all men, regardless of what their ethnic background may be. But there are some churches, about 3 or 4, that because of the music that they play, the preaching style and so forth, have that black experience that I think appeals to a number of individuals, not just from the African American community, quote unquote, but also to individuals in this valley who are drawn to the charisma and the power of that style of worship.
What do you mean by that style of worship? You mean the typical way we think of a black church, and the huge choir and the big voices that just makes you feel like you can sit and just hear them sing and preach you that way? Is that what you're referring to?
Well, it's a combination of things. For example, you're not going to find a B1 organ in a lot of churches, which you'll find where we are at, along with a full band. To have that kind of a rhythm style and that's evocative of that gospel experience. Yes, certainly the big voices, the choirs, though that's not so much part of what it is that we do, but the old gospel hymns, things that remind people of their past experience. And in this valley, for example, I think that's a unique opportunity for people that are looking to find that worship experience. So we have people from many different cultures and backgrounds that come to Santa Clarita Christian Fellowship to really get a taste of that, something that they have not experienced before.
So you're saying that you just don't cater to the African Americans or the Black Santa Clarita. You cater to everybody.
We cater to everybody, but I would be dishonest if I didn't tell you that I recognize that we function in a certain market segment, right?
That's true.
People have a tendency to cluster around that which is familiar.
That which they know.
And we know that, for example, Santa Clarita Christian Fellowship provides an experience that, quote unquote, people from LA that are moving here or black people that are moving here are very comfortable with. So it's dishonest to say that we don't understand our market segment.
Yes.
But we are certainly open to everyone, regardless of their background. If they don't know Jesus Christ as Lord, that's the main thing.
That's the main focus.
That's the main focus.
How do you feel about African American clubs within Santa Clarita? Do you think there's a need there? There's a market there? Do you, as an African American, do sometimes you feel that you may be a little overwhelmed because you may not see a lot of you all the time, and you need to be with African Americans? Do you think there's a need for that here? I
think you have a very interesting question that speaks to the desire to every once in a while let your hair down. Okay, come on, let's talk about it for a minute.
You need to be with your own
Women like
sometimes.
to get together and be able to converse and discuss without the pressure of men around. And men are the exact same way. Sometimes we need to be able to get together and just do our thing without women being around. And the same thing happens to apply, I think, to a greater degree in certain ethnic situations. We're out there in the work world, and we're put in situations where you've got to be on all the time. And sometimes you just like to be able to get in a situation where, as a quote unquote, you can let your hair down, you can be who you are, and not necessarily be on all the time.
So you don't feel that, hey, I'm an African American club. Am I isolating myself?
I think that there is a danger when those places, quote unquote, clubs or groups begin to foster negativity. That's why I'm not in favor of, I'm not very political at all. If you're going to sit around complaining and oh me, oh mine, and nobody knows the trouble I've seen.
And the man.
That's right. Now you're talking of negativity.
Yeah, but that's not what I was referring to.
Lifting people up, providing an atmosphere where they can be supported, where you can recharge your battery, so to speak, and then go back out into the general world. That's the skill you need to be able to have.
See, now that's what I was referring to, more of a networking, so you meet people that have different professions, you can share information. If there are people who have their own businesses, that's the type of organization. If it were going to be a African American, and sometimes things may start out being an African American group, and then other people hear about it, and they want to just be a part of the whole networking, and that's more what I was talking about.
It's totally
the whole
fine.
Networking, because networking is so important, even in Santa Clarita. I know you said that you don't want to be in politics, but you don't have to be in politics the way you think of being a Democrat or Republican, but you are in politics whether you if you want to admit it or not. You are in politics. At your job, there's politics. In your church, there's politics. There's politics everywhere. So you really need to know how to play the game. And playing that game is being your best, and like you said, putting the Lord first. Am I right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How do you balance it? How is the balance between for lack of a better word, church and state? How do you balance? How do you try to stay steadfast to your word and to your community and to your wife and to your job? How do you try to balance all that? Because I know people look at you and go, oh, that's a pastor, he has to do everything right. And I know the minute they probably see you spit or throw go at the window, look what you did, they're pointing at you because you put yourself on this pedestal only because, and when I mean pedestal is because you're a preacher, not because you're a pedestal because you're vain. That's not what I'm talking about. But you put yourself in a certain place. So do you ever feel like, oh, well, maybe, I better not do that. I made a wrong turn here, or I spit gum out, or I spit, I littered, Do you have to think about that? How do you balance that between everything?
That's a great question. One of the things in my approaches in the ministry is to talk about my faults up front. That way everybody knows that I pick my nose just like everybody else. I make mistakes like everybody else or more. And therefore, there's not the expectation that, quote unquote, they're going to see me walking on water, because that's not how I approach the ministry. I think that's helped me to be very effective in appealing to people and making sure they understand that this Christian walk is exactly that. I preach a lot about sin and me being the chief sinner in the entire church, just like Paul said. So that's one of the things that takes that pressure off of me as an individual. Also, you mentioned my wife. That's obviously a big part of it. Your wife will pull your coattail. She'll keep you humble. She'll tell you that you're just not all that.
She said it needs to be real with you.
Absolutely. So those are the two things. Making sure that you present yourself as an individual, and then also the fact that I'm bivocation. I have a regular job. I work down in Los Angeles. I'm a father, husband, all those kind of things. So I'm not so sheltered in the so-called clergy world that people, really react. Oh my gosh, he's shopping at Home Depot on Saturday. He's wearing shorts or something like that. They know I'm just a regular guy.
So what type of programs does your church offer?
Well, there are a lot of things. I think most importantly, there are many programs to try and help and lift up the youth. Obviously, young people are a huge part of the focus of the ministry. I started off there as youth pastor, and I think that's a great way to understand how you minister to people. So we try to minister to the entire family, churches. We try to help people with their finances. We try to teach them how to walk and live for God, because it's not just getting saved, quote unquote, or getting converted, quote unquote, but you've got to really learn how to live the Christian walk. So we're a big teaching ministry. Lots of teaching, lots of instruction, lots of practical, how you actually go through every single day, not just being saved when you're in heaven, but how to do it every single day. That's really the approach of our ministry.
When do you have services?
Services are Sunday, thanks for the plug.
I gotta give you a plug. You plugging my show.
Sunday, 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. We also have Wednesday Bible study at 7:30, and a number of different classes that are going on during the week. But those are the three primary places you want to hit. 8 o'clock if you have a short schedule, want to get in and out of there. 10 o'clock is a little longer and a little more activity, and then 7:30 on Wednesday is our service time.
Does your church offer any programs for women? Because sometimes I think as a woman, you have your husband, you have your children, you have all the responsibilities or things at your child's school, especially if you have more than one child and you have all these different responsibilities. And I think sometimes women need to be with other women to share their thoughts and how they're feeling about being a wife and a mother. Do you have any programs like that that help women?
Now, of course, the majority of the individuals at our church are women.
That's why I asked that question.
We have a healthy ministry. It's called Virtuous Women's Ministry. My wife manages that. We have a weekly Bible study on Wednesday for ladies that are available during the day. And then there are a number of different activities that are designed to provide an outlet for the ladies of the church. As you mentioned, you're carrying a lot of different hats: mother, wife, lover. All those particular parts of the woman, the whole woman, is actually being ministered to. One of the things that we're very famous for at Santa Clarita Christian Fellowship is providing an outlet for women to express themselves.
And that's what we need.
This Sunday, for
need an
example, we
outlet.
have our annual Women's Fellowship Day. They will actually manage the entire service. We'll have women speakers to come in and talk on the various topics. And then, of course, there are a number of different ways. There's teaching, there's praise dance, there's a number of different elements, as well as our annual women's retreat that we provide. I think it's in June, and that's a great time for women to get together, to nurture themselves spiritually, and to really get in touch with the Lord.
You know, you're absolutely right. I have myself gone on the retreat many times because I am a member of Santa Clarita Christian Fellowship, and I am very proud of that, and I'm proud of you, and I think you are a fabulous preacher. I know when I go there, I'm definitely going to be fed. And the women's retreat is something so powerful, and I'm happy to say that at the end of the show, if anybody wants any information about Santa Clarita Christian Fellowship, we have the website and the phone number. Please call and get any information that you need, because this church is making some noise out in Canyon Country and making a difference. And you make a difference as a pastor. Do you ever second guess yourself? Do you ever say, did I hear God right? Am I supposed to do this? Am I supposed to be a leader? How do I accept the diversity in my community, in my home? I mean, do you ever think that, this wasn't your calling?
I wouldn't say that I have thoughts about whether this was my calling, because I never wanted to be a preacher or a pastor anyway.
I know, that's why I asked you that question.
This kind of came out as a result, I think, of the Lord's hand. But just like anyone, there are times when you have great successes in the ministry where immediately following that, you begin to question, oh my gosh, what am I actually doing here? And I think that it's in those particular moments that you become keenly aware, even as Paul said, that his strength is perfected in weakness. That's in those moments when I begin to see myself and understand my incapability, then when I am weak, I am strong. Because then my strength comes through him. So I do have those periods of time where I begin to question, but it's also a great way for me to remember, because people will tell you, you're great. Oh, Pastor Harper, you're really on, and you got to watch that.
You up all right.
That'll get you, and the Lord will give you that little
pull your coattails.
Pull your coattail every once in a while. Just, hey, remember, pal, you couldn't do a thing if I were not there empowering you and enabling you to function in that particular role.
What what events does Santa Clarita have going on now? Do you have anything happening at the church that you'd like everybody to know about?
Easter, Resurrection Sunday. Services are 8 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. on that day, because we'll need a little more time to deal with it.
Now, are you going to be doing any type of production for Easter?
This year we will not be doing a production. In the past we have. This year we're going to focus primarily on praise and worship, lifting up the name of Jesus. There'll be more of a traditional feel to what we're doing this time. We like to mix it up every once in a while.
Oh, of course.
We don't want people to think, oh yeah, I know exactly what's going on over there. We want to mix it up a little bit.
I know, because you think, everybody knows the story, and how can you recreate the story? But you can recreate the story, the Easter story, and for Christmas you can recreate them in many different forms, because I know you also do a Christmas show. So tell me about your Christmas shows. What type of shows have you done?
Christmas shows are off the charts.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. In fact, I would encourage anybody that would be interested in getting one of the DVDs to write in or give us a phone call. And we have a number of different very talented writers and actors at the church. Santa Clarita Christian Fellowship is really blessed with a tremendous amount of talent. It will shock a lot of people to see the quality of the productions. All that diversity and all of that talent. Absolutely. You have singers, writers, directors. One of our directors is actually working here in the studio today.
Yes, I know. She's one of my camera people.
So it's really exciting. At Christmas time, we do a lot of original presentations.
So what do you do for the men? If the men in Santa Clarita wanted to come out to join your church, any type of programs, do you have any programs specifically just for the men? Because like you said before, it's mainly women, but I don't want to say that there are no men there, because there are some men there that really work hard and that stand by your side. They're standing to your right and to your left and really helping you do what you need to do. So what type of programs do you have for the men?
Our men's ministry is called the Men of Promise.
Men of Promise.
Men
I like
Promise,
that.
Okay. And we get together once a month on a Saturday morning for a fellowship to pray and discuss things. Men, believe it or not, like to talk. They don't let this whole picture of the silent guy fool you. When guys get together, they like to share their thoughts. They don't talk a lot around women.
That sounds interesting to me, because
they like to talk.
They do.
They like to talk. So we get together, we share the
scriptures. It may be hard
scriptures.
for people to believe that men like to talk a lot.
Men love to talk.
So you talk a lot amongst yourselves.
We talk among ourselves. We talk about the scriptures. And then we also like to do various activities. For example, coming up in April, we're going on a deep sea fishing trip.
Ooh, a fishing trip. Where are you going?
Fishing trip. You know what? Out of Oxnard, we have the director of our men's ministry, Reverend Andrew Taylor, manages that whole detail. And that's the other thing about us. We try to have men involved in every aspect that we can.
Now, when you have your men programs, do the men take the children with them?
The men do not take the children on certain things. Again, we need a break every once in a while, too. We had a fishing trip that we went up to Bakersfield, and we took our sons, a lot of the little sons with us, and that was fine. But something like taking them out on a boat or whatever, they usually have to be old enough, because you don't have to spend a lot of time worrying about whether they're going to fall off and so forth. But generally, we try to involve the youngsters whenever possible. For example, we have a basketball outing. The brothers are going to come. The young guys will play against them. And so we like to mix them in whenever we can.
That's really great. You are doing such a great job at your church and in your community, and you're a leader. You're just a leader. I'm not calling you a black leader. I'm not calling you African. I'm just calling you a leader within your community and making your community better. And I also would like to say that Santa Clarita Christian Fellowship is also in the process of building a new building. So I think you need to tell my audience about your new
Felisha,
building. I'm giving you all these plugs. You're getting all these plugs.
We've purchased a couple of acres right up on Sierra Highway and Soledad Canyon Road, just north of our location. And we recently received approval from the city of Santa Clarita to build a 15,000 square foot facility there.
And that was in the signal? I want to mention that.
That was in the signal. There was some great stories. And we're really looking forward to being able to bring some revitalization to that area. We would envision multi-purpose rooms, sanctuary and so forth with full facilities, youth facilities and so forth. And we're looking forward to being able to build that. So we certainly would request everybody's prayers, and anyone that would like to help us out with that project can certainly go online. Our website is mysccf.com.
You can also see that on your screen.
That has all the information about the building program, the different shots and so forth. So we encourage everyone to get involved, because this is going to help take Santa Clarita, the entire community, to the next level.
You know, I'd like to really thank you, Pastor Harper, for coming to talk to Felisha.
Appreciate
we talked about the diversity, we talked about your church, and I just want to say thank you so much for coming here and sharing your wealth of information, because I know everybody really appreciates it, and so do I.
Thanks.
And I want to say again, if you want any more information about Santa Clarita Christian Fellowship, you can look at the number on your screen, or you can find their website. Please say your website again.
mysccf.com.
And services are on Sunday at 8 a.m. and at 9 a.m. And I'd like to say thank you again, and see you next time on Talking with Felicia. Bye.
Good.
Wait a few minutes to finish.
Every trip, every time. Buckle up so you and your friends get home safely. Seatbelts save lives.
Okay.
Visit NHTSA.gov.
That is spectacular advice.
Don't walk. Don't walk. Walk. Do not enter. Hot dogs. Definitely like hot dogs. Motorcycle club. Everything must go. Ghostly ghouls. Don't look at that, Teddy. Body piercing. Ouch.
Everyday moments can become teaching
right,
moments,
buddy.
because learning starts long before school does. Give your child the start they need at bornlearning.org.
Before big rig trucks, freight came through the Newhall Pass by train, horse, and mule. But what's the deal with the camels? The Civil War was several years off, and the U.S. Army wanted a way to carry supplies west from Texas. Horses and mules couldn't handle the rigors of the desert, and Jefferson Davis, Secretary of War, believed the rugged beasts of Arabia were just the ticket. Camels came over from the Middle East, and so was born the United States Camel Corps. The animals did a fine job, but they spooked the horses and spit at the soldiers. The grand experiment was headed for the scrap heap of history, but not before Edward Beale, a veteran of the Mexican-American War, led a caravan of 25 camels, 44 soldiers, and 2 camel jockeys across the Arizona desert, stopping first at Los Angeles, then up through the Newhall Pass and on to Fort Tejon at the top of the Grapevine. War was brewing now, and there were more important things for the Army to do than worry about some ornery camels. The beasts were forgotten, but not by Beale, who still hauled supplies back and forth from Tejon to L.A. on camelback right through the Santa Clarita Valley. Beale ended up letting the camels roam free on his land up the Grapevine. Camel sightings were reported in the Tehachapis and the banks of the Santa Clara River for years. Want to learn more about Santa Clarita Valley history? Click on scvhistory.com or stop by the Saugus train station in downtown Newhall weekends 1 to 4.